backwards to you?
It is backwards to me.
Why am I a mirror image of myself? I don't want to be a mirror image.
I think you can fix that on your end. Yeah,
Fixed.
see?
Done. Okay. Tommy, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing
Guys,
excellent.
Y'all know Dylan. He's a good friend of Tommy Nation Politics, and we're here back again to talk about the politics. Probably other things, but I don't know. Dylan, you wanted to talk, so what are we talking about?
I don't know. You usually have a list of shit that's just like constantly on your mind that you want to go over, and I figured there was something like that.
Yeah, there is always. It's part of my flaw and my content creation. But I mean, first of all, you know, I don't like you're a friend, but I know you don't like really like back the fuck off when like you're trying to tell the truth. So I'm just gonna tell the truth as you do.
Okay.
Your fucking boy Trump, bro. Okay.
He's not my boy. He's not my. I don't own him.
I just don't see it. I don't understand how he's going to possibly win the nomination. I don't see how he.
Well, he's definitely going to win the nomination. I don't know if he's going to win the election, but I think he'll definitely win the nomination.
Well, you really do, because like even Rupert Murdoch is like literally he took Tucker Carlson off
but who gives a shit about Rupert Murdoch? The people who care about Rupert Murdoch were the people who didn't like Trump in the first place.
So Fox News owns Rupert Murdoch, but so how is that possible?
You mean Rupert Murdoch owns Fox News?
Fox News, whatever. They're the same.
But
they're the same.
Well, remember, all mainstream media is shit. I'm not a fan of Tucker Carlson, right? Yeah, he said some poignant stuff, but it's all mainstream news. So whatever side the smart people are going to, which is to say, everybody get a fucking offended at this. Right now, I think the smart people are going to the conservative side. 20 years ago, I think the smart people were going toward the progressive side because the neocons were in charge, right? But whatever the case, let's say it more clearly like this. The smart people are going toward the populist side, whether that's on the right or the left, right?
I'll agree with you.
The mainstream media is there to make sure that neither of them succeed. Right. So what about Fox News? I think the purpose of Fox News is to be MAGA enough that the MAGA people don't shut off the channel, but not so much.
That's too late now.
Not so much that they actually succeed. Right.
Okay. I see where you're going with that. So like it's like MSNBC that are going to be progressive enough where they check off black people and gay people's boxes, but they're not going to ever give health care, a living wage, or like even legalize marijuana.
The conservatives have their shiny thing in front of their faces, and the progressives have the shiny thing in front of their faces, and nobody ever gets the shiny thing. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, isn't that stupid? It makes me mad.
The only people that gets the shiny thing are the establishment. And in fact, you brought that up. So in Washington State, not that this is big news all over the country, but this elucidates a point. The minority leader in the House, I want to say the House of Washington State, his name was J.T. Wilcox, Republican minority leader. Mm-hmm. He is like so establishment Republican, it like makes you want to barf. He's so bad, right? He just stepped down on like Monday, I think. And there was a vote of who to replace him. And there's this, in quotes, non-establishment guy that everybody likes here. You know, the non-establishment right likes. His name's Jim Walsh. People are going, vote for Jim Walsh, vote for Jim Walsh. Well, Jim Walsh didn't win. This guy named Drew Stokes or something like that won. And when he won, he literally posted a tweet that said, establishment always wins. And he had this little like, you know, when you make little characters out of grammar, punctuation marks, like this little punctuation mark dude dancing.
I know what you're saying.
Right? Okay. Like he's literally mocking his supporters. Like establishment always wins, neener, neener, neener. Like he literally wrote that for his tweet. Yeah. Right? So it's, I think it's important for this, we'll put it under the populist circle right now, whether you're left or right, realizing we're more on the same side than either of us are close to the establishment.
I mean, yes, you're completely right. But during the election, though, this is what really rocks me, and it like all this whole time, me and conservatives have been having talks about what we need to do, how we need to accomplish things. But ever since the election, when the election whiff starts to happen,
Wait, are we
it all
talking
comes back to
2016 or 2020?
I'm talking about this election. It's already
2024.
begun.
Okay.
The craziness has already begun with the loony leftists and the extreme left wing, which they're not the extreme left wing. They're corporatists. They're establishment, like you keep saying. But Donald Trump doesn't seem to understand that. He seems to be pointing fingers and calling names about us. In fact, this whole Dominion lawsuit, everybody surrounded by Donald Trump is being ordered to pay massive amounts of money for this election fraud thing, and he's talking about
the election fraud thing, or specifically the Dominion lawsuit thing.
The Dominion lawsuit thing. This is why I believe that Tucker Carlson got fired in the first place. The $787 million settlement. I mean, Tucker Carlson makes $37 million. That's a nice chunk of change that they could save money on.
Well, it's I was listening to the Jimmy Dore show, progressive, that I like to.
Good for you.
He's funny as shit. But he pointed out, and then not that market capitalization of stock is actually like the money that you're making. People tend to look at. I mean, this applies to the tranny Bush, Bud Light, not Bush, Anheuser Busch Bud Light thing. But if your stock goes down, that doesn't mean like the business is losing money. There's a conflation between the two. But stock going down is a thing, and apparently Fox News has gone down more than Jimmy Dore was pointing this out. Fox News has gone down more than they've lost from the lawsuit that they had to pay off of. So
they're not the only one. Fox News isn't the only one.
And it's not entirely consistent to say, okay, Tucker Carlson has to go because he lost him a lot of money. Jimmy Dore and their team were pointing out, like, here's the actual. Like, here are clips of Tucker Carlson challenging the establishment narrative over and over and over again. And they go, here's some stuff we don't agree with him on, but forget that for a moment. Here's the stuff where he's really poking on some real issues. Of course he got fired. So, I mean, going back to Trump, my biggest thing about him is the establishment hates him so much. Like, the establishment is absolutely fucking frantic. First, when he just ran in the first place, like 2015, right? And then once he clinched the nomination, they went, oh shit. And then he actually won. I mean, like, the amount of mind loss. Well, I mean, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. The amount of Trump derangement syndrome that happened left all of us going, what the fuck is wrong with these people? What the fuck is going on? Right? Okay, what is going on over here? Like,
but it's just because they don't want anything to fundamentally change.
Exactly.
That's literally the thing it is. They don't want nothing to fundamentally change.
Here's my point about Trump. He made this error. He's doing this thing stupid. He did that thing good. I mean, sure, yeah, whatever. The establishment hates him. That's my big thing. Yeah. The establishment hates him. He must be doing something right if all the people I don't like hate him.
But what if he's doing like one thing right and like about three things wrong, like the division, the blaming of us, the loony leftists, and then he does stoke a little.
Yeah, but remember, the loony leftists aren't going to vote for him anyway, right?
That's true.
I mean,
we would if he stopped fucking doing that.
And I don't know. I mean, don't forget that this guy's like in his 70s. Well, as much as he might have his ability, he's obviously a marketing genius, right? But whatever his marketing genius is, at some point, I mean, when you get old enough, are you really in tune with what's going on with the modern technology? And all this? I mean, I don't know. And
not the Dominion voting systems.
Well, sure. Voting systems in general are they cannot be trusted just on principle. It's just stupid to have a voting system, but we can get into that later if you want.
Well, we can get into it now or later, but like I kind of want to get into it now because I think it's funny, the whole entire thing surrounding the Dominion voting systems. Trump said, quote, "I don't know who owns Dominion voting systems." Another thing about Donald, I find him stupid. He doesn't know who owns Dominion voting systems, allegedly, and yet he's going after them so badly. Turns out BlackRock owns Dominion voting systems.
That's hilarious.
Berkshire Hathaway.
That's hilarious. I didn't know that. Systems. But I mean, for me, ultimately, who owns the voting systems doesn't really matter, because one of the most important things, if you're going to have votes and have people vote and count the votes, you have to have a chain of custody, right? And let's be clear what I mean by chain of custody. For example, chain of custody, when you have a criminal proceeding, let's say there's evidence, hey, here's a bloody knife and we have a murder, right? That goes into evidence. There has to be a chain of custody from the time that evidence is collected to the time it's presented in trial that says, it's been held under lock and key at these places when it was moved. Here's the documentation when it was moved or whatever. And if there's any break in the chain of custody, it's not admissible as evidence because the potential for messing with the evidence is there. You have to, if the potential was there, you have to assume that it happened, right? So
Right.
if you've got a system, a computer system counting votes, you cannot look under the hood, even if it's open source, which is it's totally not. This is all proprietary, and it would be a national security risk if we let people actually look at the code of how that thing works. I mean, we got all that going on, but even if they had that going on, you cannot look under the hood because there's no physical thing to look at when you're looking at the system. Because I mean, any programmer who's worth a damn could totally program up a system that runs this but shows that it's running that. I mean, the idea that you're going to have computers count it is fucking retarded. Even if it's doing it right, it's fucking retarded because you lose the chain of custody. Period.
Well, that's a really interesting point. That is a very interesting point.
But maybe Dominion did this. Maybe they did the lawsuit, Death About Black. I don't know. But
what's funny is there was some election sabotage. Just check this out, guys, in Michigan.
Public official in Flint Town.
Uh-oh. What did I do? Anyway, back again.
Public official in Flint Township who committed election fraud was sentenced to probation and house arrest today in a Washtenaw County courtroom. Former Township Clerk Kathy Funk admitted she broke a seal on a ballot box to ensure votes could not be recounted in her 2020 race. Funk pleaded no contest to misconduct in office, which is a felony. And in exchange for a plea, she avoided jail time, and prosecutors dismissed a ballot tampering charge. Funk was sentenced to 2 years probation and was ordered to serve 180 days of house arrest with a tether, as well as pay a $1,000 fine. Funk must also submit a public apology letter within 30 days.
Mm-hmm. So it's just interesting, like without the programming and whatnot. What I have is two evidences of election tampering. One is that Kathy Funk thing where she broke the seal of the voting ballot, whatnot. And then the other time is when somebody on a phone call asked Brad Raffensperger if they could find 11,000 votes in Georgia, and that was on tape. And you're quoting, "You don't want a fair election, Brett. You don't want a fair election." So there's the only two, as far as I know, and as far as Dominion voting.
Well, and again, the specificity of Dominion, I think, is a straw man. Okay. Because maybe Dominion did this, maybe they did that. I don't know. First off, like I said, simply having a system, I don't care if it's Dominion or not, a computer system counting votes, you lose the chain of custody. But second off, the whole voting apparatus, and this changes state by state, is so riddled full of holes. It's simultaneously riddled full of holes in such a way that you're not allowed to see the evidence. Let me give an example. And all my examples are from Washington State because I live here. Sorry, right? Okay. In Washington State, first off, in order to register to vote, if you have a driver's license or a social security card, social security number, you're good. Now, according to the law in Washington State, in order to get a driver's license, there's like three. If you really want to, we could pull up the actual fucking law, but I don't think anyone wants this level of boringness. You have to either provide some sort of documentation that you're a U.S. citizen, or provide some sort of documentation that you're not and you're from who you are or you say you are, or option C, the person working there feels that they've identified you enough. Literally, it says it right in the fucking law. So it
feels that sounds legal.
Well, it might be like it's the person
Intense?
the person
I don't
working
know.
there decides that they have enough evidence to determine that, but whatever. But I mean,
Okay. Probable cause?
it's completely subjective on the worker to determine whether or not they have the ability to identify you. So first of all,
It sounds exactly like what they do in police work. I love
so
that.
a Washington State driver's license isn't worth shit for identifying somebody, by the way. This isn't the same in all states, but Washington State, it's like that. And I mean, almost anybody can get a social security number. I mean, you can fucking buy one online if you really want to. But I mean, if you come here and let's say you're a student from another country, you get a social security number. So with these,
Really?
with these, you can vote. I mean, you register to vote in Washington. But wait, there's more. So you fill out the thing. Either you have to write your driver's license number or the last 4 digits of the social security number. You don't even need the whole thing, just the last 4 digits. If neither of those check out, they don't reject it. You become provisionally registered to vote. That is the language in the law. And now once you're provisionally registered to vote, you'll be sent a new piece of mail, and that new piece of mail says, "We were unable to identify you. Please send one of these forms of identification." And on that list is bank statement or utility bill. In Washington State, if you can show a bank statement or a utility bill, you can register to vote.
Okay. And so all those people with bank statements and utility bills, they'll be voting for Biden then.
Wait, there's more. Okay. Now, I don't know who is somebody taking advantage of that? If they are, who are they voting for? I don't know. I mean, how do you prove it? How do you prove it? Let's take this one step further. Is that in addition, if you've got multiple people registering from the same place and you have mail-in ballots, those ballots get mailed out. As long as you have a ballot that matches the data for that registrant in the system, that's a valid vote. But you sign it and you mail it in. Like, you don't know who signed that. And yes, they have the signature verification. But how hard is it to find somebody's signature, particularly if you were farming these things to begin with? So again, for example, you can call this the homeless voting industrial complex. So in the left coast, as some people like to call it, we have they call it a homeless problem. I prefer to refer to it as the tweaker apocalypse. But
edit that out.
No, fuck that. Fuck that. I have cleaned up personally. I have cleaned up tweaker pads with needles and shit and rats and mold. Fuck them. Really? I can call them whatever the hell I want. God damn, it's disgusting. I have cleaned up after them. You clean up after them, and then you come back to me, and we'll see what words you use.
Okay.
God, don't tell me how to refer to the fucking tweakers.
That's fair, Dylan, but like literally. But don't you understand how that literally feeds the already white supremacist element that's already voting for your party? That feeds them. It does.
But
they hate.
The tweakers are white.
The
tweakers are white. What are you talking about?
Dude, does it matter to these people?
Okay, whatever.
Does it matter to these people?
Okay, and anyway,
just like Trump's homelessness. Did you see his plan to clean up homelessness?
I mean, I heard him talk about it, but I mean, as far as I'm concerned,
what I was going to ask all of his people, how is he going to do that? Are they just going to disappear? It's like that movie where Jack Black is like cleaning up shit, and he's like, "Where's the shit go?"
I haven't seen that.
Shit has to go somewhere.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how Trump's going to do it, but. If
he involve gas chambers. What about that? What if it involves gas chambers?
I can't disagree with that option. God,
Dylan,
you have not cleaned up that for them. You don't know. You don't fucking know how awful it is.
I'm really sorry about that.
You don't know.
But at the end of the day,
it's because bad these parasites.
I understand.
Live.
I've seen. Look, I worked in bars, Dylan. I've seen people literally take shits on the ground and run away. And you know what? Somewhere, there is someone who is has got a father, who's got a mother, who's got sisters, who's got brothers, who's got hope that was lost, who's got an education that was taken away,
right?
Who's hungry, who's scared, who needs a friend, who needs somebody to believe in them.
They need some Malcolm X is what they need. Have you ever read the autobiography of Malcolm X?
No,
I've
I
read the
haven't.
autobiography of Malcolm X, and one thing that I really appreciated in that is that after he went to prison and he meets the Nation of Islam and converts and all that stuff, and he basically goes out and proselytizes for this Nation of Islam stuff. One of the big things they did, I think if I remember correctly, this was in the Harlem area, is you had a lot of black people addicted to heroin. And what the Nation of Islam would do is they'd find the people and they'd be like, brother, we're here to help you out. They take them into a room, and while they were going through withdrawals, they'd have a group of people just go in there. You could do it, man. You could do it, man. You know, we're here to back you up. We could do it. We're here to back you up. You got this. You got this. And they get the fucking people off heroin. Now maybe Nation of Islam is crazy, but goddamn, it sounds a lot better than being a junkie.
It does.
Right?
It sucks being a junkie, bro.
So when I say it needs some Malcolm X, that's what I'm referring to. Is there's some getting yourself dirty. I don't mean for the obviously for the junkie, but I mean for the people helping the junkie. You got to get out there, get yourself dirty, and I mean you got to basically put this guy up against a mirror and say, we're standing here until you can look at this, and it's going to be painful, and we're here to support you, but fucking buckle up.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. Hopefully that's what Trump means with his homeless.
Well, and then a very excellent presentation that I saw was by Stefan Molyneux, where I think it was something to the effect of the truth about mental health. Some title is something like that. And of course, he's been wiped off of YouTube, so you got to go to his website, freedomain.com, and search his list of podcasts to find it. But there was a period 15, 20 years ago where the mental institutions started closing. There was this big push to close the mental institutions. And I think what we're seeing is when we've got these homeless people, I think there's 4 different people in this category. You've got the drug addicts, and these can overlap. You got the drug addicts, you got the mentally ill, you've got the criminals, and then I'm not saying there isn't an element of people who are down on their luck, right?
Right.
So there's a different solution to each of these. And for the criminals, they got to go to jail. For the mentally ill, we should have mental institutions to put the mentally ill in the fucking mental institution, because it helps them and it helps everybody else if you do that. Right? And then for the drug addicts, they need the help that they need to get to stop doing the drug. And for the people down on their luck, I mean, yeah, that happens, but I gotta say there are so many fucking services available to you. Like if I was down on my luck, I would not become a tweaker. I just wouldn't do it. I would do whatever I could to get out of there. So for the people down on their luck, I kind of have this. It's like, how really down on your luck are you versus you making bad choices?
That's true. It's kind of making bad choices is kind of like being a tweaker, though. It's like how do you stop making bad choices?
I think there's when it comes to the tweaker, you've made the bad choice where you're now stuck, because there's this fascinating scene that I went back at some point and rewatched The Godfather. After I was doing this junk removal company where I had the unfortunate experience of cleaning up tweaker pads. And you remember the scene in the Godfather movie where all the mafia bosses meet, and there's this discussion of what do we do about selling drugs? Because originally we said we don't want to sell the drugs, but it's so much money. Our guys, they can't help themselves. So what do we do? And the guy goes, well, first of all, I want it out of the schools, and then we should sell it mainly to the colored. They're already animals anyway. Let them and then here's the thing: let them lose their souls. Yeah. Now, forgetting the black thing for a second, let them lose their souls. What does that mean? I scratched my head on that for a while. When I realized, when you take these drugs, because you become a slave to the drug, your soul is your capacity. I mean, this is without a religious connotation to it. Your soul is your capacity to have free will agency, to make choices. Mm. You lose the soul because you lose your capacity to make free will choices because you were a slave to the drug.
Exactly.
Right?
That's exactly
So
right.
someone making I see what you're saying. You make bad decisions and you get stuck in it, but that's a different universe from I'm addicted to this drug and that's the entirety of my existence, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And furthermore,
Yeah.
I think because because this is from what I understand, this is a very sensitive topic to in the addiction world. Are you responsible for your choices or not? Because the first thing that you do at AA, or the first thing that you do at was Addictions Anonymous or whatever. Not that I've been there, I've just heard this. Is I am not in control of myself. Is like the first admission that you
Right.
have to make.
My life is
Yeah,
unmanageable. My life is
what
unmanageable.
my life is unmanageable, and I can never be cured. Those are like
Right.
the first two things. I can never be cured, and I don't have control of myself. Well, what the fuck is that? If you don't have it, like, okay, you don't have it now, but you want to get it and you want to be cured. Why can't that be a goal? So that this idea of
That's a good question. That's one of the things that they go off on AA a lot about. They have conversations about that in AA a lot
yeah.
about that.
So if now here's where I go philosophically with this. Either you are responsible and the weight of being able to make your own decisions need to be placed back on your shoulders, or you're not responsible, so I get to make decisions for you. Because you're not responsible. You can't make your own decisions. Somebody else has to do it. Right? I mean, you got to pick one. If it's this, then you need to make better decisions. If it's not, then we're going to grab your ass and stick you in the mental institution or whatever, because you're not responsible for making your own decisions. So someone else has to do it for you. Pick one.
That's a very interesting point. That's a very interesting
Pick one.
point.
I want to talk about cleaning up tweaker pads.
Okay. Apparently you do. So go ahead,
So
Dylan. The floor is yours.
I used to own a junk removal company. The junk removal company still exists. I sold out to my business partner, but before I did, we had the opportunity to do a couple tweaker pads, which I mean, as everybody knows, is where it's where the meth heads or the junkies collaborate. And I know tweaker specifically is supposed to refer to meth head, but I use it for anybody who gets addicted to really, really hard drugs, heroin, fentanyl, whatever. I just all encompassing tweaker for me. And, you go there, finally they get evicted or something, right? And there was this one up in this rural area that we went to. It was right on a highway where, I mean, the chop shop is out in the open. It's on the fucking highway. Like there's 2 bazillion cars passing it every day. Just it's right on the edge of the highway. The chop shop is there. There's 15 cars all over the property. And they're all chopped up, and there's, semi trucks showing up on a regular basis, dropping off these cars to get chopped up. There was like 9 people living here. They finally get evicted because the bank foreclosed on the house, and then they were able to evict the people. They hire a contractor who hires us to clean this place up. And so we do a bid, we get the bid, we go there, we clean this up. And you walk into the house, and the first thing you're assaulted with is the smell. And you think, this is the most horrifying smell, the most horrifying thing I've ever experienced in my life. That's your first thought, right? Then you walk through. And as you're walking through, it's like, okay, here's the rat shit. Here's the human shit. Here's the needles everywhere. Here's the hole in the roof that happened because somebody was cooking, whether it was meth or they're just cooking, and there's a hole in the roof, which means it's been raining. Not that the electricity's been on for a fucking year or the water's been on for a year to keep the place dry to begin with, and so mold has just permeated the whole house. And you're like, this is like, how do these people literally not die living in these conditions? How did they literally not die living in these conditions? Then you start cleaning. And as you start pulling stuff away, where you find, okay, here's where, the greater pile of needles, or the fridge that hadn't been opened in 5 years, or this is the hole that they were shitting in, or the bucket of shit, or and you every 30 minutes as you're going through, you go, okay, this is the most horrifying thing I have ever experienced in my life. And then 30 minutes later, you go, no, this is the most horrifying thing I've ever experienced in my life. And that never stops until the place is clean. Like you keep saying, okay, it's not going to get any worse than this. It's not going to get any worse than this, right? Fast forward, we're cleaning up another one. I'm in an excavator this time, right? picking up stuff and sticking it in a garbage can or a garbage container. And these people had been here this one guy had been in this house for 10 years. And this real estate investment group I was connected with had finally bought this house from this couple that they hadn't collected rent in 10 years. And this guy had been in there. And this guy is so crazy that every night he's coming out on the porch, 2 a.m, screaming at the top of his lungs. And all the neighbors have to deal with it. None of the neighbors can let their kids play outside because there's just needles all over the place. And we were there for the eviction. First thing that happens is, the sheriff goes in. Hey, everybody, time to get out. And sheriff moves everybody out. And this was right on next to the freeway. So there was a little bit of a green belt between the house and the freeway. Tweakers literally start coming out of the woods. Trucks start coming out of the woods as like all these tweakers scatter.
Wait,
yeah, because the eviction finally happened. All these tweakers scatter. So there's 10 years of fucking garbage in this place. Needles everywhere. Needles fucking everywhere. And in particular, there's a garbage mound because, there's been no water or power at this place for God knows how many years that they've just been throwing this garbage out in the back. And so as we're going through this garbage, there was one guy who's working for the guys who bought the place who started poking his hands in there. I'm like, don't fucking touch it. Do not touch it, right? Just don't touch anything. I'm getting in there with the excavator. And there's these pop bottles. And occasionally I pop one of these bottles, pinching with the excavator. They're full of piss. There's tweaker piss popping and spraying everywhere. You want to talk about a horrifying smell? Now, and I figured, by the way, if anybody ever has to clean up a tweaker pad, you put on your dust mask, tea tree oil. Oh my God, changed everything. Fucking dust mask with some tea tree oil. You will, it works. Trust me, it just works. Anyway, I didn't find out till later. Because we kept going, why are they pissing in these bottles? What are they pissing in these bottles for? You ready to find out why they piss in the bottles?
No, I'm not. God damn it. I'm not ready. Why?
So they could drink it later.
Ah!
Because some of the heroin comes out in the piss, and if you're really jonesing and you can't get a hit, you could always drink the piss.
Can I please just not ever?
Now, when you said gas chamber and I reacted the way I did, I've had tweaker piss bottles explode in my face. Not in my face, but you get what I mean. Did I not have a fair reaction when you said gas chambers?
There's just a part of me that's just so glad that I never had to be that bad.
So going back to that one that was next to the highway. So as we're cleaning this up, people are literally honking and waving at us. Yeah, you're cleaning it up, right? And at some point, the code enforcement officer of the county comes by, and he's like, "Oh my God, you guys are cleaning this up, thank you." And we're like, and he says, "I have over 500 complaints on this property." And he said there was a guy here. There was 9 people living here. 9 was. I applied it to the wrong thing. There was a bunch of people living here. One guy was in a wheelchair. He had 9 warrants out for his arrest. But the cops wouldn't take him because they couldn't accommodate a guy in a wheelchair. What does that mean? If I'm in a wheelchair, I can just go rob everybody? And then...
Can you rob people in a wheelchair?
And I don't know what he had warrants out for. But then at one point, the neighbor comes over and says, "Oh, thank you so much. Oh, my God." Right? She's like, "I told the police." So this is the neighbor from the backyard, right? And there's no fence or anything in between the two. She's got this shed out there that has a window facing the tweaker pad. She's like, "I told the police they could camp out in my shed and watch them all night, and they wouldn't do it."
Of course not. Probably not. I wouldn't either.
So, yeah, I mean,
how do you get that bad?
How do you get that bad and not die? I don't get it. But
How do you? Yeah.
Did your body like not know you're dead? Do you get super tweaker powers? Like what the fuck? I think they get tweaker powers.
Yeah, probably, bro.
Dude.
That's amazing.
Like it's and just think about the
Yeah.
public health issue that house was, or the other one where I was popping the tweaker piss bottles, right?
Yeah.
Like how much of a societal drain is it to have these things everywhere?
Yes,
yeah, I mean,
it is. You convinced me of that.
Yeah, and again, like when I say gas them, I'm only half joking. I'm only half joking, right? But if we want to sit back and say, okay, there's got to be some level of compassion and there's got to be some level of tough love, right? There, it's somewhere in the middle. I think we have to break it down into the multiple components and address them individually. I had somebody on my show who's actually, she works for a nonprofit in the area that tweakers are bad in this area, by the way, really bad. The city that I live was known as Tweakerville before the tweaker apocalypse happened. It's like that here. And she operates this nonprofit where she came on and she described her name was Kristen Moore. She's got the same last name as me. She described that so there's all these services for people to help tweakers. However, there's one problem with all the services is there's nobody helping the tweaker navigate the services. Because I mean, it's hard enough for you and me to fucking go to the Department of Licensing and get our driver's license, navigating through that bureaucracy, right? Or go to the post office to get your passport or whatever. It's like, fuck, what the hell do I need to sign or whatever?
Yeah, that was hard.
Now, imagine someone strung out on drugs who has to go through like 18 layers of this. And because, the first thing, if they decide that they want to get off, first thing they have to do is go to detox. Once they detox, then they have to go to rehab. But in between detox and rehab, they might let you go to detox and be like, okay, we'll have an opening at rehab for you in 16 days. They ain't gonna make it. Like, get fucking real, right? Or after they get to rehab, it's like, okay, to get to this halfway housing, you got to fill out this thing and send it to this agency or whatever. So this girl, and they only have 16 beds at this place. This girl's, the nonprofit she's working for, what they do is they grab the person and say, okay, you stay here and we help you navigate through all this shit as you're getting through it. That was way cool. I'm like, God damn, that sounds like exactly what needs to happen. Like that's the glue missing out of all these steps.
Yeah.
At least again, this is for the drug addicted component, right? This is not addressing the mentally ill and the criminal component. But yeah, I think if it's going to be addressed, I mean, it has to be a multi-pronged attack. And also, we discussed this. I mean, let's take an even further step back. And I think the progressive audience will like this is we have to have a society where I hate the term living wage, but I'm going to use it, where there's a living wage, right?
Woo!
Where
Woo!
And what I don't mean minimum wage. I mean, there has to be enough opportunity where if I follow the dictates of the society, that I get rewarded for it. That's not the case right now.
Yeah, that's what we mean. Yeah,
that's not the case right now. Right? And part of that is once you understand MMT, which is what we're always talking about over on our show when we're talking about economics, is that the government has to have a big enough deficit to employ the people that it's taxing. It has to have a big enough deficit to employ the people that it's taxing. And one step from that, we feel that the best way to inject that deficit, because when the government spends, it has to appear somewhere, right? Whether you're buying a service or giving Social Security or whatever, somebody has to be the recipient of that money. Right? Well, you and I know who's the big recipient of the government money. I mean, other than like Social Security and Medicaid.
Corporations?
Well, or corporations or government contractors, right? Or big pharma or whatever, because they bought all the vaccines and what, So, but people with connections, I think is the good way to do it. Is the best way to say it. Like, people with connections. Now, the conservative side would say, well, the majority of the money goes to Social Security and Medicaid. Okay, yeah, that's true, but is it enough? And again, Social Security, yes, you're hitting the bottom rung, but you're hitting the bottom rung of the retired population. You're not hitting the bottom rung of the population that needs to grow and produce. And we feel that the solution to this is a federal transition job, which is to say there's this employer of last resort where if there's no one else to get a job with, or if you don't want to get a job with somebody else, the federal government can always hire you for something. It's always available. And
that's what we call a jobs guarantee.
That's different. Okay, this is where the progressive MNTers and me and Nima over at our show want a point of clarity. So I use the term federal transition job, where the progressives like to say federal job guarantee. Technically, this is the same thing, but here's the difference in the implication. The purpose of this employer of last resort is not to permanently employ anybody.
Yeah, we've talked about this.
Now, there is permanent employment in the federal government, right? There's stuff you can do in the federal government. This thing is not that. This thing is to catch you. A, keeps you employed, so you have something on your resume when you want to go back to the private sector. And B, it starts injecting money into the community, right? So, I mean, let's take, you got a small town community, and let's zero in on a restaurant just for the sake of example, right? The people in the community, presuming the food's any good, right? The people in the community need to have enough money to afford to eat at that restaurant. Now, if the people in the community don't have enough money to afford to eat at that restaurant, they're not going to eat there. The restaurant's not going to make enough money. And let's say they fire somebody because they're going, we're getting rid of this shift, or we're closing the backside during morning hours or whatever because there ain't enough people in here. You're fired. Sorry.
Right.
Now, if that person turns around and and another emphasis is this needs to be controlled locally. The funds have to come federally, but it has to be controlled locally. They go in the city, there's a federal transition job, they're fucking digging ditches or pulling weeds or some shit, right? When that money is paid to them, that's not money that got generated that's within the community. That's money that gets created by the federal government. Poof, it appears out of nowhere in their paycheck.
Right.
Now that poof out of nowhere is now money in the community. And that money can start getting spent in the community. So to the extent to which people are working at the federal transition job is the extent to which money is getting injected into that community. Now, as money is getting injected into that community, suddenly people might be able to afford to go to that restaurant. And if more and more people can afford to go to that restaurant, the restaurant owner might go, hey, shit, I need to hire some more people so I can open this back spot up for the morning shift, for breakfast. Now, hire that guy. Right. Because they could pay him more than whatever the federal transition job pays. They could hire that guy back out, get him back into the private sector, which is where we wanted him in the first place, and it shuts off that money valve. Because you could say, well, what if there's, it injects too much money into the system? Well, this is the automatic stabilizer, is you inject money into the system so that the private sector can afford to hire out of the public sector, and that stops the injection of the money into the system. It's an automatic balancer, right? This is because government causes the problem of unemployment by taxing you. The fact that you or I are unemployed means we're not making money in the unit of account, right? If you're unemployed or I'm unemployed in the United States, it means nobody's paying us dollars, United States dollars. Right. Correct. The fact that we're not making Chinese yuan right now doing whatever we're doing doesn't mean we're unemployed because we don't live in China. Right. So
for now,
because the government taxes, it causes unemployment. It is the responsibility of the government to provide a means to pay that tax. And the most fundamental way to do that, to hit it at the bottom, get the money from bottom up instead of, trickling it down. Not that I believe in trickle down economics, but the points, the imagery still stands.
You don't believe in it like you don't believe it exists, or don't believe it like you don't believe that it works.
Both, right? There is an essence of trickle down, but I don't think anyone has ever argued directly like, hey, pay me a bunch of money and I'm the big corporation, I'll keep 80% of it as a bonus and the rest of it will trickle down to the lower peons.
They don't talk about bonuses, but they do talk. I mean, this is how people get government contracts. This is what Joe Biden promised with by the bottom up, right? Because when we had those contracts with pharma, he was like, okay, well, this is going to employ lots of different people to be doing the vaccines, and they're all going to have a hand in it. That's how we can, right? And so,
there's an element of truth to that. There is an element of truth to that. However, it favors this company or that company. It has to,
true,
because the money has to go somewhere, right?
That's true. That's true. And so that's why it always ends up being trickle down economics in this country.
Well, and then
we call it neoliberalism.
Is it trickle down, or because I mean, for the people working it's true for the people working it there, that's great. But what about the people who live on some part of the country where they don't work there? Right?
Well, they should have.
They shouldn't live there.
Look, they shouldn't live there. Fat. Look, Jack. They shouldn't live there.
Yeah. So I think the federal transition job, not the federal jobs guarantee, the federal transition job is the thing that hits the entire board, affects the lowest rungs first, and becomes the automatic stabilizer for the money that needs to be put into the system so people can pay the tax that's demanded of them.
I mean, that makes sense. You've explained that super well. I feel like I'm on board.
Yeah,
with that.
I think my opinion is, if people understood MMT, this would no longer be a left-right thing. It's not a left-right thing. It's a this is how the government works thing. Right? I mean, because the people to which MMT explodes the heads the most when they first hear it are libertarians and anarchists. Right? Because they're like, oh my God, because there's this thing about the positive right and the negative right. You know what I'm talking about? Yes. Right? Well, because you can say, okay, the right to healthcare is a positive right, therefore it's not actually a right in the way that the founders described it, which I agree with, but that doesn't mean we can't figure out a way to give everybody healthcare. But there's this middle zone. For example, the Constitution says you have a right to a speedy trial. Well, if I take that at its face, that's a positive right. However,
a positive right, yes, it is.
Kinda.
On its face. Unless the speedy trial is done with haste, and the fact that nobody presents evidence, you get a horrible lawyer, and you don't get a.
Oh yeah, I'm not talking about those problems. This is blue sky, just talking about the concepts, right?
I see.
So, however, government causes the problem of arresting you in the first place.
True.
Therefore, they have an obligation to give you the right of a way to deal with that problem. Right? I think that is consistent with a libertarian thought. Not that I'm saying I'm a libertarian. I'm just saying I think that's consistent with libertarian thought in terms of positive and negative rights. And that is analogous to the government, by taxing you, causes the problem of unemployment. Therefore, they have a duty to provide you a way of getting the token to pay the tax. I think when you say it that way, it's not a left-right thing. It's not a left-right thing. Now, the left-right thing becomes, okay, should we employ more people in the government or should we employ more people in the private sector? And Warren Mosler points this out. Warren Mosler is like the brain that came up with this money theory. Or who I think come up with is not the right term, observed that this is the case of how the economy works, is that if you're a left MMTer, you could say, okay, let's make the taxes really high so that the private sector is not able to pay the tax in aggregate. That's going to make a bunch of people unemployed. Then the government will offer employment and the people will come to the government to become employed. That's kind of a leftist MMT view. The right MMT view would be, no. Let's lower the taxes and reduce the size of the government and let the private sector hire those people. That's more the right side. I fall more on the right side of that. But In either
At
case,
this point, I'm not.
in either
yeah, at
case,
this
you
point,
have to
I'm
have
not-
the deficit,
I'm not for.
right? Because
Right.
when it comes to deficits versus austerity, I'll take the leftist solution over austerity.
And what's your definition of austerity?
Oh, it's where you don't give the private sector enough money to pay the tax.
Okay.
So,
Just making sure. Yes.
and then what this turns into is you need to balance your budget. You have to stop having so many government services. You need to do this. You need to do that. And then you can say, okay, well, maybe the government shouldn't be doing that. However, if you're going to take away that government service, which takes away the deficit being spent, but you're not putting the deficit in somewhere else, you're taking the private sector's money away.
See, I feel like that's just the moderate view. I don't think that's left or right. I think that's what a true moderate is. If you're going to take away a government service, you have to put in something for the that will balance out things that balance out.
I'm not talking specifically of whatever the service is. I'm talking about making sure the private sector has enough tax tokens to, first of all, pay its tax, and second, have enough left over to run an economy.
Yeah.
And the only way that happens is by, particularly because we pay taxes based off of our income.
Yeah.
That means there's a constant drain on the system. So there has to be a constant influx on the system to make up for it.
Yeah. Speaking of constant drains, if we're done with that, there's one more thing I wanted to talk to you about. The constant drain on the system being endless war.
Yes.
I wanted you to see this little video, and I wanted you to react on this, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But this is interesting.
Makes their own judgments about their independence. We are not moving. We're not encouraging their being independent. We're not. That's their decision.
But would U.S. forces defend the island?
Yes, if in fact there was an unprecedented attack.
So unlike Ukraine, to be clear, sir, U.S. forces, U.S. men and women, would defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion?
Yes.
President Biden last fall saying for the first time that if China invades Taiwan, the U.S. would send troops to defend it. It's an invasion many experts predict could happen in this decade. We got a fascinating inside look this week at how members on the House China Committee are gaming out war scenarios. In the sky, on the sea, China staging combat exercises, a show of force, a warning that a potential blockade of Taiwan could be coming. The Chinese army even releasing this simulation of how they'd attack the nearby island, a self-governed democracy that China claims as its own territory. But on Capitol Hill this week, lawmakers staged their own simulation.
Tonight is not about a desire for war. It's certainly not about playing frivolous games.
It's about prevent war games.
China Committee Chairman Mike Gallagher and Ranking Member Raja Krishnamurthy set up the exercise with the Center for New American Security.
This game is going to be a Chinese invasion of Taiwan set in 2027.
What exactly do we know right now about their mobilization effort?
Members from both sides of the aisle coming together, politics set aside. There's Virginia Republican Robert Whitman and Massachusetts Democrat Jake Auchincloss, the members taking on the role of advisors to the president.
What have we communicated to expats and students who are in China right now?
This is part of what you get to decide.
That's Stacey Pettijohn, a senior fellow from CNAS, acting as the game master.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs can't pick up the phone and talk to his PLA counterpart.
Correct. Unfortunately, General Holmes is cut off.
Retired General Mike Holmes is playing the role of chairman of the Joint Chiefs, laying out to members what military options there are.
The biggest benefit from fighting from a distance is that you preserve and protect your forces.
But diplomatic and economic options are on the table as well.
Many of our allies agreed to take part in economic activities with us as a precursor to these conversations.
Has there been any activity at the United Nations yet?
After debating how the U.S. should react, lawmakers took a vote announcing their move.
We will be standing with our friends in Taiwan. We have forces in the region that are pre-positioned. We're surging forces in the region. We are also prepared to impose maximum economic pressure in the event of an invasion, including sanctions against most major Chinese banks, including kicking China off the SWIFT system.
But wait a minute. Chinese authorities, played by CNAS staffers, quickly counter, surging troops, forcing a communications blackout in Taiwan, and banning exports of electronic goods to the U.S.
So that means we are going after companies like Apple, Dell, HP. You want a new iPhone? Guess what? You're not going to get it.
Lots of questions, lots of lessons.
It was remarkable to see all of you there working together. It's not a view we often get. We see you in hearings, we see you on TV, but this is a group that is really working together.
We're trying to.
It's good to see them working together in war games, isn't it? These two parties.
The first thing is, I actually feel a little bit better about Joe Biden with him talking like that.
What?
So,
Really?
first of all, fuck China. I guess that's second of all. Fuck China. And this whole thing, China just released a simulation of how it would attack. Obviously, they're not gonna. Obviously, they're not gonna do what they released, dumbass.
Did you see the simulation though? It was like with laser beams.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Okay. So the Chinese strategists got together and they said, okay, here's our plan. What we're gonna do is announce it to the world. Yeah. That's what they did. Whatever.
Well, this is funny. That's funny. That's a good point, Dylan. But my point is on the left is Center for New Security. Sounds like a think tank that's getting these two parties all ramped up, like they're playing Dungeons and Dragons. Wasn't that a D&D episode? No, see, we got your apple, and we got your apple there.
Well, let me say a few things about China.
What the
let me say a
hell?
few things about China. Is the U.S. would, if it came to this in Taiwan, the U.S. would steamroll China so hard the country would implode. China right now is teetering on a knife's fucking edge. They're almost. I mean, it's bad in China right now. So the person you want to listen to about this is a guy by the name of Peter Zehan. I'm not saying he's totally accurate on everything, but he makes some very, very good points. First of all, let's talk about military. Did you know that China has 2 aircraft carriers? Two. The first aircraft carrier used to be a cruise ship. The second aircraft carrier is modeled off the one that used to be a cruise ship.
Well, that sounds exotic.
Yes. China's naval force projection capacity is 1,500 miles if nobody's shooting at them. This is me repeating Peter Zehan. If somebody's shooting at them, it's 350 miles. The best, biggest, most radical navy on the face of the planet is the United States, bar none, by far.
But,
you know who number 2 is? You know who number 2 is?
Who?
Japan.
Why? Japan.
Which I thought Japan wasn't supposed to be doing that, but whatever. You know who number 3 is? Britain. So Japan's all up in China's business. The U.S. is all up in China's business. And there's a moat in between China and Taiwan. An amphibious assault is one of the most difficult things you could possibly fucking do in military. For them to get their troops onto Taiwan, they're going to lose like millions. I mean, just blasted to shit. Then once they get on Taiwan, Taiwan's been preparing to fight China for like 40 fucking years. And there's mountains and seas and all the stuff in between. Just like I mean,
isn't there a one China policy where Taiwan is?
Yeah, that's
part
what China
of
says.
And that
That's
never
what China
changed?
says. And then Taiwan's, let's be really politically offensive here. China, the actual name of China is Western Taiwan. China? Do you mean Western Taiwan? Yeah. I probably.
Wow, that sounds like something Trump.
No,
would
well,
say.
and it sounds like if I said that in China, I'd probably be executed for it, right? So I sent to a torture camp or whatever. So the other thing to realize is that if China had sanctions on them, China imports something along the lines of 40% of its energy and 40% of its food.
Okay.
So we've seen the sanctions on Russia, but Russia's a net energy exporter and a net food exporter. China imports food and energy. If they stopped importing their food and energy, the whole shit would be like. And to top it off, they think like, oh, we're going to stop making your microchips and electronics and stuff. Peter Zahan pointed this out as well. China, so there's like 3 different stages of semiconductors is really the important piece of these, right? There's 3. There's the good ones, the middle ones, and the low quality ones. The good ones are made by like the U.S. and Taiwan. Taiwan's number 1, right? I think the U.S. is trying to pick up speed. The middle ones, I believe, are more like Mexico and Southeast Asia. The absolute shit ones, and by absolute shit ones, this is the stuff like in your drying machine that makes it kind of sing a song like you're playing Zelda from fucking the Nintendo 64, right? Did everybody get that reference? Basically, if we don't have the Zelda 64 music themes for our dryers coming from China, I think we're going to be okay. And Peter Zahan pointed this out. Here's another thing to give the Biden regime credit for. So even though China is making these low quality stuff, they're doing it with Western software, imported software. They're doing it with imported management, and they're doing it with imported companies building the fucking facilities. China can't do shit. They're retards.
Well, speaking of retards, what the fuck was that in Capitol Hill?
Let me add one more thing. The Biden administration a couple months ago just told all the software companies in China, or all the Americans working for the software companies in China, that you can either choose between working there, in which case you give up your citizenship, or you leave. Within 24 hours, every single U.S. citizen working in the sector left. China just lost its capacity to make its own fucking microchips. China is so fucked. It's so fucked. I think this whole thing about them releasing shit about Taiwan, it's like North Korea that it just keeps lobbing rockets into the ocean. It's just posturing. It's nothing but posturing.
So I don't put that past China, and I don't disregard what you're saying. But on the other hand, we've got the Center for New American Security.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Think tank.
Okay.
And this is the thing that alarms me. Okay, because I don't really care about China. If you haven't noticed, I've been watching your show, and I'm very secure with the fact that they're not really a threat. They're really not.
They're
So
not. Yeah.
What's more of a threat are these think tanks.
So we'll pretend that China's a threat so we can do this thing that we wouldn't otherwise be allowed to do in this country. That's the point you're getting. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So these senior fellows, they're pretending to be Chinese authorities.
For the D&D role play.
How dangerous is this on a global scale?
I don't know. It's the first time I've heard about it when you just mentioned it to me. So I don't know.
I've never. So you don't know anything about this security for new Center for New Security, because they sound like they've been around for a bit.
Let me go.
Okay, I just want.
What is it? Center for New Security.
Center for New American Security. New American Security. It sounds like new knowledge.
This sounds like more marble cake. Democracy under threat. I got the website pulled up right now. Oh yeah, good stuff.
Really? Okay. This sounds like they're making money off
avoiding the brink.
Discord. They're fomenting Discord for sure. I think that's their whole plan.
Well, most of these groups like this, their whole plan is to figure out how do we disassemble the constitutional apparatus of the United States. And that's what all these think tanks are for. Is like, we got this constitutional apparatus of the United States getting in the way of us having supreme power over the earth. How do we disassemble that so we can have supreme power over the earth? Let's sit around and think about it.
You think it's going to work? You think it's going to work eventually?
I hate this. I hate it when people ask this question because you're taking the agency out of your head, out of your soul.
Okay.
You're taking it out and you're throwing it at somebody else.
You're right.
Right?
You're right.
Is it going to work?
So
I don't know. What the fuck are you going to do about it? Yeah.
I don't know, Drew. That's true. That's true. You know, I'm glad to have people like you that like really get me on that because it's hard not to ask those questions, Dylan. It really
Well,
is.
and
But you're right.
Everybody does it, and I got to tell you this. So I got invited to 2 different shows recently with like they are like self-proclaimed white nationalists. We are racists, and we think the Jews are doing everything, right? And I'm not saying they don't have points on stuff, but I did make fun of them a lot because I'm like, you guys are just a bunch of fucking LARPers. I mean, I had one guy making fun of me because my wife's Japanese and I have, mixed children. And, I think there's something to be said of, if you're white and like being white, we should make more white people. Great. So do it. Like, how many kids do you have? None? Well, shut the fuck up. Right? Like, you're just LARPing. It's just a big fucking LARP, right? And I mean, you get these guys like, well, the answer is we need a white ethno state. No, the answer is we need Christian nationalism. Well, the answer is we need fascism. Now, maybe there are points to argue in those 3 things, but it's like, well, what are you doing about it? Oh, we just like post on fucking 4chan and shit. I'm like, well, then shut the fuck up. Like, if it. Right?
I would like to see that episode.
I didn't post it on our stuff, but I'm sure you could go back and dig it up. But I think well, use this alt-right term for a second. I think they might have this harder than other communities. Is they've got this very fatalistic view that usually it's the Jews controlling everything. And I actually challenged them on this one too, because okay, you're a white nationalist or you're a white supremacist or whatever, you're self-proclaimed, and then at the same time you're saying that the Jews are ruling everything. So are you the supreme race or not?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like if the white's the best, why are you losing? Right. Yeah. So
that's a good question.
And again, I mean, I think there is something to the fact of like, okay, there's these different races and there's this diversity that's really attacking white people, and it's bad to be white now, and that's all real, but your solutions suck. And you're LARPing.
I'm gonna look up the word LARPing.
I'll tell you. I'm sorry. Live action role play.
Okay,
we all gotta go dress up as Harry Potter and pretend we're casting magic at each other or whatever. That sort of shit, right? You guys are LARPing. Is what I'm getting at them. And the whole discussion that they're really tuned into, what's your opinion on Christian nationalism? What's your opinion on democracy? What's your opinion on the Jewish question? And they're really geared into having the correct worldview. And I tried to get this at him where it's like, what the fuck does your worldview matter if you have no action? Right?
That's
right. I said that because it's like, okay, I got these ideas in my head. The world works this way. I know what's in my head is not congruent with reality. I know that. Right? So whatever solution I have in my head is probably not once the rubber hits the road, it's going to get dirty and it's not going to work out the way I got to go into my head. Right? So I got an idea that I want to work toward, but I'm not so narcissistic to think that I've got, we just need fascism. And once we have fascism, then everything will be good again. Right? Hitler was misunderstood and fascism is what the people said it was, which I think there's an element of truth to that. But does that mean fascism's good? I don't think so. Right?
Yeah.
Or people that we want Christian nationalism. I'm like, well, what does that mean? Tell me about the nuts and the bolts, right? Because I asked one of them, I said, okay, if you have Christian nationalism, you have a religious theocracy, what is your mechanism in place to make sure you don't have narcissists and psychopaths getting control of power and having instruments, social organizations institutionalizing so that the original goal of the organization becomes secondary to feeding the organization itself? How are you going to stop that? No idea. So you don't have a fucking solution. And even if you did, it doesn't matter because you're not doing anything anyway.
Yeah. So that's
they want a silver bullet. They're like, what's the silver bullet? Everybody's freaking out. What's the silver bullet? What's the silver bullet? The silver bullet is you fucking work.
Bernie Sanders.
The silver bullet is you work your fucking ass off and you fail a lot. That's the silver bullet. Right? You work your fucking ass off, you fail over and 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 over again, and finally you get the thing that you worked for decades. or you die and you fail. That's reality. There's no silver bullet.
I literally just want to leave it there. I really do. I really want to leave it there. Guys, this was Tommy Nation Politics. Be free thinking, innovative, open-minded, progressive media. This was Dylan Moore from Irida TV. Catch him. Where are you at, Dylan?
Where am I at? Oh, I'm at Irida.tv. If you can see here, just type Irida, IRIDA, put a period right here, .tv. You'll check out all our stuff. We're on YouTube. We're on Rumble. We're on Odyssey. I write the most stuff on our Telegram channel. I like Telegram.
I love talking with you, man. First of all, you're a good friend. Second of all, I don't have to do a lot of editing. Send you the video. And
well, editing for what? What are you editing? Just of stuff that's boring in the middle, or what?
No, I don't know. Now I don't even know. At first, I thought it was going to be something, but now I think I'll just I'll do this as it is. Except for this, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. You've convinced me not to